So I'm still 1 minute early, trying to just get logged in here next to me so I can see your guys' questions and I don't have to look up here at my phone, which is barely visible to me. So while you're waiting, these are some native brushes that will work well for the dandelions if you want to get started on that. So I will have a bit of a delay seeing your questions, and I will only be able to check them every couple minutes. This is a pretty quick tutorial though. So here's some native brushes: wet glaze, dry brush, in case you can't see those, Freycinet, I don't know how to say that, Larapuna, turpentine, Salamanca, Signet, Tamar, and Spectra, and there's quite a few more. There's some charcoals that look good, and it really just depends on the look that you want, you know, really streaky or just very, very circular like this one, and the charcoals will kind of be soft edges like that as well. You can really get creative with a lot of different brushes. These are just a few that I went through really quickly and found that I liked. Some of them you can just swirl around like this, and some of them you have to actually make strokes like that. I am just going to use native brushes tonight because I like doing that for Instagram lives. But on this one, you may have seen me post, these are done in brushes that are coming out in my next class. So I might just use this ground one tonight just to show it to you really quick. The rocks and the grass and everything is in that class, and even this texture in the background. But we can get that texture with other brushes as well, a similar texture at least. And then I'm not going to show you one that has this chunk missing, but as you're going along, think about how you can have a completed one and just erase sections. So do it as a complete one and then erase the sections that you want to have as missing little parts like this, instead of trying to create it as a partial dandelion. And then I'll show you just one of these little separate ones too, super simple. The character is using techniques that I teach in my very beginner character illustration class. So I don't teach that body shape, but the style of illustration is from that class and the brushes. All right, so hopefully everybody has found a fun brush. If you want me to just choose one so you don't have to make a decision tonight, since you don't have time to really play, I am going to choose Larapuna. It's a favorite of mine. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm on a 10 by 10 canvas, and I've chosen a nice rich middle blue. So I'm doing this in a way that is going to allow you to follow along. And in case you're just joining me, I will check for questions, but it might take me a couple minutes to see them. So just be patient with me. I like to start with a few layers, and let's just go to the middle. Let's see, we chose Larapuna. I never remember which section things are in. We're going to be coming back to the painting section for a Nico rule soon, but Larapuna is probably an artistic. So in the artistic category is Larapuna, and I'm on white, and I'm on about 50%. I'm just going to make a big dandelion kind of up here. We're not doing a whole bunch of them because you can do those later, just going to do the one. And just think about the middle and just kind of make, so Larapuna is kind of different. Larapuna has some really solid color you can get with it, or you can press lighter and kind of smudge it as you go. So depending on how much color you want, you can be pressing lighter with it all the way around, or darker, and just get a circle-ish shape. For Larapuna, I probably would not, well, you know, it does work pretty well if you want to go to a bigger size and just go round and round. So what I'm looking at, the middle is actually going to be messed with and erased, so don't worry about the middle. What I'm looking at is the edge. I'm getting a nice painterly edge. I'll just go ahead and zoom in here. And then I press and hold the eraser. Oops, I didn't press it and hold it, I tapped it. So it switches to Larapuna. And I'm just going to erase a little bit in the center. And then I'm going to press and hold to get to Larapuna. I always double check, I don't trust it. On the smudge, and I'm at about 25% smudging on Larapuna. And I'm just going to pull some of this empty space out. So it kind of looks like I'm smudging blue, but I'm just kind of pulling, I might go a little bigger, pulling some out. So I'm kind of clearing some of the center. And if you look at a dandelion, it's definitely more concentrated in white outside because of where all of those little fluffy parts are concentrated. And this ended up kind of pulling some white back into the center, which is fine. If you want to erase a little bit more and pull some more out so it's a little darker. This part is kind of stylized. Well, the whole thing is just stylized. We're not going for realism, which you probably hear me say a lot if you watch my classes. I've spent months getting away from realism. I like having kind of that creaminess there, so I'm leaving a little cloudiness in the middle, and I might even turn the opacity down on this layer later. We'll decide that later. And then another thing we're going to do with this layer is alpha lock it. And let's just go to a charcoal. Sorry, you probably just heard a toilet flush in my house. Oops, charcoal. I'm going to go to willow charcoal. My Instagram lives are very casual because I have 5 people home 24/7 right now. So it takes a lot to keep this house quiet. So I don't have them be quiet during my lives, just during my class recordings. So, so what I'm doing right now is just getting some fun little purples and pinks. Whoop, that was too much. So hopefully you can see that. It's just a little, and you don't have to, you can keep it white. And if you overdo it, you can kind of come back to white and add some more white. All right, so we're gonna do the stem underneath that. And the reason we're doing it underneath is because I want it to kind of hide underneath this concentrated white area here. For the stem, I'm just going to go to Nico Rule, and that would be in the painting section, Nico Rule. And let's go to a yellowish green. Now, depending on the blue you chose, you're going to want to find a good green that doesn't blend too much. So if I chose a darker green with this darker blue, and I'm on a layer under my original here, it's just kind of, well, that one's not too bad, but if you're not careful, you can get one that's a little bit too similar. So play around with a nice green. You can change this green later with alpha lock and adding some more shadows, or some more tones. So don't worry too much about what color you've got right at this second. And then pick a good stem width. So this one is at about 5%. And I'm on a 10-inch canvas at 300 dpi, so that will be different. The percent will be different if you're on a different sized canvas. So I'm going to come from the center and just kind of make a curving line. Oh, my hand is a little nervous. Okay. That's okay, Sarah. Thank you for helping. And on the same layer, I'm going to come over to kind of the oranges and medium brown. This gets hidden, so you don't really need to worry about what color this is. And this is that little middle piece. It's kind of a squashed circle right on top of the stem. Hopefully you can see that. So that's where all the seeds come out. And if you need to look at a reference photo to kind of judge how big that should be, you can look at some photos online. So it's, it's not too big compared to the puff, but it's not tiny. All right. So we're going to come to a layer above those two. So in case you can't see that, that's our stem and the little seed spot there. I wonder what that is called. Let's see. All the seeds go into the ovary, maybe? Okay, and then above that, we're going to pick a darker brown color. I'm going to go a little bit more orangey, dark brown. And let's go to inking and pick dry ink, one of my favorites. And I'm on 5%. So really imprecise is what we're going for. And we're going to do a couple of layers because we're going to be smudging each layer and we don't want to smudge them into each other. So coming just kind of out like spokes in a tire or a bicycle wheel. Pretty straight. They don't have to be perfectly straight. And then also different lengths. So the other thing I like to do is do a little broken line like that. Maybe one that's just out here. So I'm going to rush on this part, but you guys spend some time on this part. This part ends up being pretty visible. And then over in smudge, go to, let's see, painting, and go down to turpentine and go to a pretty small size, like 2%. And I like this streakiness that turpentine, and I'm just going to smear those. So it doesn't really matter what brush. If you're going to smear like this, it doesn't matter what brush you really used on that initial lines, because they're just going to get stretched out. Any questions? All right. I'm going to go to a layer under that because I'm going to do a lighter brown in that same thing that we just did. So just get a few shades going. Be really kind of random, as long as you're not kind of, doing some weird angle, like starting from over here and going that way. Doing some shorter ones, doing some more smearing with the turpentine brush. I can't really see what I'm doing right now because I haven't zoomed in. So I have 2 shades of brown. I'm going to go on a layer above both of those and probably go back to a darker, and maybe even darker than the first one we did, and go again. This time I'm going to add my seeds on this little seed pod here, whatever that's called. I really want to look up what that's called now. Maybe someone can look up what that's called. So I'm just going to do it on this same layer, and when I smudge this layer, I need to make sure I don't smudge the seed pods, but how I'm going to do these little seeds is just pressing a little harder with the brush, and I'm just making some random little thingies here. It's the little seed at the end of the stem. And now when I smudge these darker lines, I'm just smudging the line itself. I'm not smudging these seeds. So you can smudge first and then add those seeds. I really like this painty, smudgy look for these. If you want to be more precise, you can spend much more time even using the snap to straight lines. There's some really great, if you Google images for dandelion paintings specifically, get some really great ideas that way. All right, so now I need to decide if I'm going to turn the opacity down on this. I think I'll just turn it down a little bit, so it's about 86%. And I'm going to come up to a new layer and put a little more white. So this is where I'm a little stuck. Maybe I can use this. So I'm in the inking section. I'm going to test this thylacine I have been using my own brushes for this part, and so that could work if we smudge it. Let's try to smudge it with the turpentine brush. Now, so what I'm going to do is just go through these brushes really quick and see if any of these might work. I think these are going to be a little bit too strong. So I chose in the drawing section the copperhead brush, and I've got it on a pretty big size, and I'm going to turn the opacity down to like 50%. What I'm doing now is getting some streaks, so like that. So I'm just doing short little bursts. And we're going to smudge too, so. And I'm going to keep it on turpentine for smudging. I'm going to pull some down into the middle. And I'm still seeing some streaks, so I don't want all the streaks to go away. I'm basically just trying to add a bit of a streaky, fluffy layer on top. And then the next thing you do, you can go ahead and go to turpentine. So I was on turpentine in smudge, so I'm going to tap and hold the pencil so it goes to turpentine. And go really small, like 2%. Okay, so I'm on the turpentine on like 2%, and I'm just kind of, this is one of the ideas I saw had kind of painty blobs for, oops, I want to come to a new layer. If you have a lot of layers to work with, do this on a new layer in case you decide to change your mind about a different layer. I just like to, oops, that's a little small, so I'm going to come up to like 4%. I found something that just had these kind of random white blobs of paint. It was real paint, what I was looking at, and I liked the look of that. I am going to go in here as well, and I'm seeing I don't have enough white covering my seed head here, so I'm going to come back and add some more white to that layer we just did. I don't want this to look super uniform, so I don't want it to look like a brick pattern or radial. You might, if you want it might be super fun to actually use the symmetry tool to do a radial design on this. All right. So get some really concentrated white spots there. I'm going to come back down a layer and just get some kind of cloudiness there. I think I might just use Nico Rule and smudge it a little bit. So I'm just going to add a little here and then smudge it a little bit. Kind of hides that seed head a little bit. And then finally, you can go up to the top layer and go back to the dry ink brush in the inking section on a pretty small size, 4% maybe. And I just picked some random ones to give that little, you know how the top of them kind of splays out like that. And I didn't want to do every single one of them, but that was just the style choice that I was making at the time that I did my dandelions. So I saw some really cute ones with like a stamp of a little cross that just kind of indicated these little tops. From a biology standpoint, this is survival. So the wind will take these far away and they can germinate far, far, far away. Into your yard where you don't want them. Bye, Sarah. If you have a lot of that seed head showing, you might want to add some contrast to it, maybe some shading down below. You can do that simply by alpha locking that layer and then choosing a dark brown Whoops. And since you're on alpha lock, you can just kind of color right on it and it won't go out of the lines. And then I'm going to do some shadowing on my green stem here too. I'm going to choose this green, just go darker. I'll go to a big size on the dry ink and just maybe do one side of it. On my other one, I have a streaky brush I used on it. And then this Nico rule always kind of cuts out like that, and that's just part of the look of Nico rule. So if you don't like that, there's lots of other brushes you can do with that. I like texture, so I like that. Just do a little bit lighter on that side. And let's just do a little bit on the background. If you're just joining us, I'll show you some more, not in your yard. I'll show you some more brushes that work really well. So that's our finished dandelion. And you can even just turn off the background and 3-finger swipe down, copy all, and then 3-finger swipe down and paste. And now you have one on its own layer. I'm going to group all of these so I can show you that. Turn that one off and you have that one. I'll turn the background back on. So now you have one on its own layer and the one that we did. So when you do that, that usually works, that copy all usually works to duplicate. When you have stuff that you've used a lot of different blend modes on, it doesn't always work to just flatten a group. Sometimes the blend modes get weird, but that copy all does a really good job. And since we had the background off, it just copied the dandelion itself. So then I would leave the original alone and then take the duplicate and, you know, make it smaller, maybe make it a little bit more transparent, and then it looks like it's further away. You can do all sorts of things. So let's do a little bit with the background. If I go to that blue, whatever blue you chose, and maybe go to a darker version of it, let's hop over to, let's see, artistic. I do like Larapuna. Painting, jagged brush, and just go up pretty big. I'm on 50-something%. That's too big, but just get some dark colors. And then go back to the original blue you had and go lighter, maybe a little more greener. And then tap and hold to get the jagged brush as your smudge brush. This is the best part. I don't like to do too light of a background on the dandelion because I like to see the blue through the center. And I actually didn't do a very good job getting too much blue showing through the center on this one. So I would probably go back. Let's see, where did we go wrong with that? This layer right there. Maybe we can just turn the opacity down on that one a little bit. So just if you want more of the blue to show through. If you look at a picture, you can usually see right through the center there. So if I go to a greenish yellow and a pretty dark color and go to my brush that I showed you guys at the very beginning, I think it's this one. Hopefully you can see that. It's like sponge painting. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here.